Good afternoon and welcome to spring here at MIT. It's kind of spring. Come on, it's headed towards spring. It is almost, I think spring is fully here. I've put away my winter coat and I'm not bringing it back. And I hope you're doing the same. And I hope you're doing very well because we have a great Dean's Innovative Leader Series speaker in Martin Madaus. Dr. Madaus serves as the chairman, president, and CEO of Millipore Corporation. And this is really a very special lunch in multiple respects because not only have we asked Martin to come and speak as the Dean's Innovative Leaders Series speaker for April, but he is also here both by expertise and under the auspices of our Sustainability Speaker Series here at MIT Sloan. You know, Martin is a great person to speak to both of those topics, and I'll get to his background in just a minute. If I could give you a little preview, though, of May, as you're looking ahead in your calendars, on May 7th, we'll be having May's Dean's Innovative Leader Series speaker when Linda Mason comes and joins us. And I hope that you will put that on your calendar. Linda is the CEO of Bright Horizons Family Solutions, and they are the largest global supplier of child care in employee-supported child care. She also serves as the chairman of Mercy Corps, which is a global organization building healthy and just communities. And that's really going to be a very inspirational as well as informative session. So I hope you'll keep May 7th on your calendar. Now to turn to today's session. Martin joined Millipore as the president and CEO in January of 2005. By March of 2005, he was also named chairman. Millipore, for over 50 years, has been a global leader in filtration manufacturing. And Martin did a number of things coming into the organization that were innovative. This is a firm that lives on innovation. Among those elements of innovation was his understanding that this was, and continues to be, a very highly respected firm with a great brand, a great perception, and an opportunity to broaden the set of products that customers would value from this particular organization. So between 2004 and now, he has nearly doubled sales of this organization, providing very great business success under his leadership. But Martin's also here to talk to you about his perspective on sustainability. And during the same time, starting just a little later, Martin has really been a leader within his organization and across the industry in bringing sustainability very seriously to his organization. And I'm not going to steal his thunder on this, but he really does believe that his organization's survival as an innovator is in meaningful measure driven by the perspectives that they adopt and pursue with respect to sustainability. This is a firm that has not only reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by over 20% in the last few years, not only gotten to a place where about half of its auto fleet is hybrid vehicles, but this is an organization that gives its employees $3,500 for each hybrid vehicle it purchases. Now, I don't know that you can just go and join the organization to get the $3,500 rebate, although, in fact, we're very proud that Millipore does have a number of MIT alums among its employees. So without further ado, you're here to hear Martin. And Martin, please, we're very grateful to have you with us today. Please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Dean Schmidt-Line. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm kind of awed by the audience here. And, you know, I'm running a public company. Obviously, I talk a lot about investing and business strategies and where the business is going. I'm not going to do that today. That may be an opportunity for another time. I want to talk about something that is very important to our future, and that is how we can transform Millipore, our company. We're a mid-cap company, about 1.6 billion revenue, 6,000 people. So it's an organization. How can we move that organization into an operating mode that is sustainable from an environmental standpoint long term? So that's my talk today. If you have other questions, please feel free. I'll talk about roughly 20, 30 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A. But this topic is very important for us, and hopefully you understand at the end of my talk why. So here's the kind of the agenda. Introduction, what's the issue? What's our vision to address that issue? What are the results so far? And how have we selected the priorities in sustainability? Because there are a lot of things you can do. How do we drive performance? What is the role that innovation plays in sustainability? Then a conclusion. We live in very interesting times today, and when you look at the amount of information that we have today and how fast the information moves, it's amazing. And I think the times are very good. No matter what the short-term economic recession is, fundamentally we live in very good times. We have capital that's moving around the world very freely, and that is very good. And so good ideas, with some exceptions in the short term, good ideas can be funded very fast. We have very little trade barriers today. And when I think back when I was in college, to think that there will be hundreds of millions of people in China and India and other countries to reach a level of affluence that they have reached today, it's truly amazing. So there are a lot of great ideas, innovative ideas, the good ones, whether it's the next generation sequencing of the human genome, or the latest application for the iPhone, or really a bad idea, spreading nasty computer viruses around. All this is possible very fast at incredible speeds. And you almost have today an instant market for a lot of products, an instant market. That was not the case a few years ago. So for us, when we look at our operations, everything has to be global. It has to be a global idea. It has to be a global product. It has to be a globally scalable idea. And we are doing this. We are helping scientists to bring these global ideas to the market today. But with all this progress and this wealth that has been created long term, in a relatively short amount of time, there is one topic that I think we have neglected, and that is trying to build a business that is also built on environmental principles. And we believe today that building a business that takes that into account, taking an environment into account that has constraints in resources, for example, water, oil, gas, and building a company on those principles will be key for the survival of the company and for the future. Now that sounds maybe a little bit radical, and it's a long-term vision, but that is certainly something that we've started to do. A few years ago, sustainability was managed with a very different perspective. We looked basically at sustainability from a compliance standpoint. So you basically say, well, let's make sure we're not getting into trouble with the EPA. Let's make sure we're not polluting the environment, and we meet the standards. Of course, we've done that all the time. But that is certainly not enough. And we've just started a few years ago to look at energy efficiency, waste, water, and a number of things with totally different focus. And the focus now is that sustainability will be built into the operation of the company now. So there's a big, big shift going on in the company and in the world. So why are we doing this? And now I'm getting to the issue here overall. Why are we really doing this? Why is this important? And I want to tell you why this is important for business in the long term. We live in a smaller, hotter, more populated, more crowded world. And if you read the book from Thomas Friedman, the latest one, you can see there are a lot of evidence that there are huge number of conflicts driven in the world today exclusively because of resources, whether it's oil, gas, water. So what we're seeing today and the amount of money we're spending on is truly a war for resources today. If you've been to Shanghai, one of the most dynamic cities in the world today, you think it's awesome. It's amazing. I mean, it's like everything is new. It looks like a Manhattan and new. And that's great, and it's very good. But then you look at it and say, this also looks like very much an American city. And is that a good idea? Is this really a good idea to copy exactly what we have in the US today? And I say that because I think one of the big problems we have to address is that we're truly energy hogs. And I don't mean that personally to you, but collectively, as a country, we are energy hogs. And here's the slide I want to start with. And this is the problem. The chart basically shows you, it's from the authoritative source of Wikipedia. So it's what you read, right? I mean, that's what my kids do. I mean, this is it for anything. But it's real data, and it shows basically per capita CO2 consumption in the world. And red is bad, white is better, and you see the difference here. The point is, if you look at this map and calculate it, the U.S. per capita is 21.5 tons per person CO2. Europe, on average, is 9.6. China is 5.7, the fastest growing. India is around 2. Climatologists are saying to have a sustainable level by 2050, we have to have a per capita tons of CO2 of 2.2. So that is a dramatic reduction across the board, and particularly in the US. So the whole point of this, and this is why this Shanghai example is relevant, is you cannot scale the American lifestyle. You can't. We cannot be an example for the world when you look at our energy consumption. And that's why we have to fundamentally change how we move forward with companies, with our personal consumption on energy. This has direct impact, of course, on greenhouse gas. I don't have to tell you, you know that very well. But if you want to keep the planet healthy, if you want to keep the climate from heating up to levels that is dangerous, if you want to keep businesses healthy and going, you have to, at one point, and this point is, in my view, today or yesterday, you have to address that issues for the generations to come. I think the climate change is the issue of your generation. It's the issue of my generation, too. But let's face it, I work probably another 10, 15 years. You have to work a lot longer. So I'm sorry to say that, but you'll have to deal with that issue. There's no doubt about it. And I care about it from a business standpoint. So the challenge is, for me, two things. You have to bring two things in line here. Is how can we stabilize global greenhouse gas emission at one hand, but also maintaining economic growth? You have to be able to do both. It's not a choice. And this is, I think, where the business community and environmentalists have always been at odds, because it's like, no, you can't do this. We have to address both. And the formula here, very simplistic, is carbon productivity. So it's the GDP divided by the tons of CO2 you're emitting. Now, that is something that I think businesses such as Millipore, but hopefully thousands of other companies, have to build into their operation. It's a very large challenge because we need a 10x productivity improvement, a 10x carbon productivity improvement. And when you look at some reports and some projections, in the Industrial Revolution, you had a 10x labor productivity improvement. And we have to have a similar type of productivity improvement in a carbon-constrained world in half the time. That's the challenge that you have. That's the challenge that we have. It looks very big, right? It's a very big goal. The good news is, and this is all tied to climate projections, probably what climatologists are saying, 500 parts per million is a safe level to stabilize the atmosphere at that level of CO2. It is actually doable, which is the amazing part. McKinsey Institute estimated that the GDP expenditure to achieve that level of carbon productivity production is between 0.6 and 1.7 of GDP as an expenditure. So what is that? That is less than 10% of the healthcare budget. I don't know what's in relation to the military budget. I don't have those numbers, but it would be an interesting number. But it's certainly a good investment, particularly when you consider the mitigation cost of a climate catastrophe. It would be unbelievably expensive for all of us. So it is a big goal, but it is, based on what we know today, a very doable goal. And what I want to talk about today is what are the little things a little company like my company can do to move in that direction. It takes much more than us doing it, obviously, but we have done a few things. So the reason why I care about this is because it's important for the business, it's important for the long term, and it's also important for my kids. You know, they should have, let me see, these are my kids. A little bit dated, the picture, but that's going to be their problem. You know, they are going to have to deal with this issue just like you have, and they care about it. And when you ask them what global warming is, they understand this today very well, but in terms of what we can do about it, the answers are still fairly thin, and that's what we have to work on. We owe some responses to these kids. So in our company, first of all, so we're a life science company. We focus on innovation. We help scientists to advance life science products and research. So we're big in biotech, a number of fields. For us, being at the cutting edge of environment is also a good business idea. I'm not pretending that we're only doing it for a good purpose. Again, I'm trying to balance the good purpose here with our business goals. So what we're trying to do is build environmental sustainability into our operations now. We have a number of focus areas, and this is important. You got to focus on areas that matter to you. There's no generic strategy. So for us, it's, for example, products and packaging. We make 30,000 different products. We make plastics. We use oil-based resins. We use a lot of energy and water, so focus on that. We create tons of waste. 90% of our business is disposable, so it's used one time. So when you're in a lab and you see one of these filters or plates, we have to address that. We need water. And last but not least, we have to bring in everyone in the company behind this. We have to have a bigger impact than just the company. We want to make an impact on people's life too, so that their habits change also. And that is a very important part of our strategy overall. Here's the overview so far. So we started about two or three years ago with these areas. So we have focused on climate and energy. And I'll give you some concrete examples for each of these, where the issues were and what we've done overall. Well, but our approach is basically, it's a change initiative. So we have teams working on that. I'm the sponsor. I'm the executive sponsor. David Newman, who's here. David, can you stand up, please? David is our champion. David is the head of the Sustainability Initiative, also head of the Environmental Health and Safety Organization. And he has teams around the world. They're driving these various improvement initiatives. The change initiative has had a tremendous impact on the company in a relatively short period of time, because many people, not us in executives, many people have embraced them, have run with it. There are many ideas in the company that have been implemented that I didn't know of. We gave people a general direction. We want to focus on these areas, and there's a tremendous amount of energy and ideas coming out that show results today. So let me go into some examples here. So first, climate and energy. We have reduced our greenhouse gases, and I'll show you some details on that, by 15% since 2006. So we set a goal, a 5-year goal, 20%, unrelated to the revenue. That's important. It should not be tied to the revenue. It should be an absolute goal. Otherwise, it doesn't make an impact on the climate. We bought 10%, or we're buying today 10% wind energy. We installed a wind turbine. We're doing a major solar energy installation here in Massachusetts, also in France. And we're moving now to a LEED certified standard for new buildings. In some cases, we can do some retrofitting. This is climate energy. This is here the greenhouse gas emission. And here, this is an interesting story. This is, so we learned how to capture greenhouse gases, how to do the accounting correctly. And that's in itself is some work. It's basically like a new accounting system for greenhouse gases. So for us, you can see here, you have boilers and generators, you have fleet vehicles, you have air conditioning, you have process, that's basically production energy, and then you have the vehicles. And so, for example, we said 06 was our baseline. We wanted to do 20% in 5 years. We did 15% in 2 years. So sounds like a goal that we will achieve, maybe exceed, and then we'll set another goal. But also what we learned is when you do the accounting, you may not be 100% accurate. And this is part of the learning. So we underaccounted in 07 for, green process emissions, which is basically what comes out of manufacturing. So that part was underaccounted. We didn't reset the goal, but that's part of the learning. You'll make mistakes in the accounting, and then you restate it. The key is that you're honest and very transparent about what you're trying to do. Investors starting to look for this. There's definitely a huge need for disclosure on greenhouse gas emissions. So we're starting to do this now. We'll be issuing our first sustainability report this year. This is a graph on revenues versus emissions. You can see our revenues grew this way. Last year, they only grew 5%, 07 much more. But you can see there's a decoupling possible, and that's carbon productivity. So that's the whole idea about carbon productivity. You have to be able to grow and produce without raising carbon emission at the same time. That has to be decoupled. Otherwise, it will not make an impact on global warming. And that's the advantage. The amazing part is it's so doable. It is amazingly doable because there is, again, go back to the first chart, we're wasting so much energy. So the amount of inefficiency and waste that we found in the company by just starting to turn things off, using new technology is frightening. I can just imagine what this could be if you do it nationwide. Many companies are doing that today. Here's an example on savings in climate and energy. So electricity and lighting is a big fact. You have warehouses, you can use new lighting system. Installed a new lighting system, saved about 1.24 million kilowatt hours. Compressed air is a good example. We run a lot of labs. So in the laboratories, you have compressed air, which is running a lot of tools. And these things are always on. Why do they have to be always on? Or they're engineered in a way that they're extremely inefficient. So they go around a lot of corners. So you have to repipe. We put new equipment in. We put new piping in. And we're running it in a more efficient way. And as a result, we saved compressed air 2 million. I think that's just in Massachusetts here. Other things, so the payback in this case was a little bit less than 2 years. We saved also $470,000, which is good. So it actually makes business sense to do it. And again, this is just us here in Massachusetts as a mid-sized company. This has a lot of short-term payback for the whole country and for the whole world. Very important to us is to involve all of our people around the world in this effort. And there's a true groundswell going on right now. There are a lot of people wanting to do it, and also our customers wanting to do it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give incentives for hybrid vehicles, for example. Okay, that's a good thing to do. It won't save the world, but it's a really good people engagement tool for us. We have sustainable commuting offers. We have energy awareness days. We have an education campaign. And we're looking for more and more ideas to provide incentives to our people around the world to do it. This has been tremendous. We have an employee poster campaign, so it's our own branded campaign about the impact of energy efficiency, global warming, water waste, to get the message out to everyone that this is important. So now we're getting people to come forward with ideas that we might implement in the future. Very important part of what we can do. I wish that at one point we could make energy saving and eco-efficiency really cool and make it interesting. Today, it's still viewed more as a chore. Oh, I have to turn this thing off. Oh, it's difficult. It's a behavior change. Oh, I don't want to enter my car when it's cold. All these things you hear. Or why do I have to turn the computer off? But it comes to this really fundamental behavior change that we have to impact energy efficiency and ecologically living in an ecologically sustainable way. This is part of that. This is our little contribution to that. Let me talk next about innovation. And this is goes now beyond, I would say, eco-efficiency. And this is the more difficult and more long-term impact here. We make products for biotech production. So our products are used in 99.9% of all biotech products in the world. Here's an example of a recent product. It's a clarification product you can see over there. Actually, I have a pointer here. Right? This is one of our filters. This is one of our holders. And these big items, they're disposable. And the trend in the industry is to move to more and more disposable products. And when you think about this, this sounds like, this is an environmentally friendly company. They're moving to more disposable. And in fact, that's our business. But in reality, when you look at the overall impact of this product, you actually have a positive impact on the environment because you're changing the way the customer produces today. If you've been to a biotech plant, you may know that or may not. It's a very large facility. It costs about $300 million to build for one drug. And it's built of large stainless steel vessels, and these vessels need to be cleaned, rinsed, heat steamed. So it's a very labor and energy intensive process. With these products, over time, you can replace that entire manufacturing equipment and do it in a disposable format. So use it once a time. You don't need the water, you don't need the energy, you don't need the labor. And net, you save, actually make a positive impact on the environment. And this is not a marketing story, how we market it. This has been verified with studies and with a new product lifecycle tool that we've developed. So there's a way, when you look at the overall environmental impact of your product, there's a way to look at a common problem in a different way. And when you look at the energy bill and the water bill, and you bring this to the attention of the customers, they start to listen now because that is a major concern. So it is basically innovation on the process level, using different technologies, existing technologies, and applying it to a major problem. And this is an example for me how we consider ecological design principles or requirements also in our product design. The next example is more around the waste. So we make also, this is not for the laboratory, this is one of our instruments for the laboratory. So in the laboratory, you need all kinds of qualities of water, and we make that, and it has to be easy to use, simple. And this is high-tech water. If you drink it, you die, so don't ever do it. It's very, very pure water. But the issue is this piece here. This piece is basically disposable, again, and you need a recycling program for that. Recycling is difficult. There's not a good market for recycling. So what do you do? So we're starting, first of all, recycle our own scrap here in our plant. And we're right now in the middle of looking at a recycling program, product take-back program that we can offer to our customers. Our customers are starting to demand it, which is a good thing. So we'll find a way to do it, and it will become overall a nice differentiating feature in our offering. Now, the interesting part is to bring this further is that in this business, there is new technology that actually improves the entire process of this lab water generation. So today, to generate ultra-pure water, you need X liters more than you actually get out. So there's a very big inefficiency. You need several liters of water to put in to get maybe a liter out. There are new technologies that we're working on that will change that process fundamentally. And so when you look at innovation from an ecological standpoint, you might adopt different technologies. And that's today in development. That's what we're trying to get out. So eventually, this will become actually a pretty green product. So that was the second example. The third one is, this is a little esoteric one, but I like it because it's using bioplastics. Bioplastics is basically a corn-based resin that can be used instead of an oil-based resin, which is good. Again, going back to our goal, more independence from oil-based products. This is a small product, so this is this little stand here. You can't make it in clear yet. This is still standard. But it's our first foray into using other products and oil-based products and offering them to our customers. You can't eat it, but you can. It's very hard, actually. But you can actually compost it in 90 days. Just hard to believe. Looks like plastic, but you can compost it in 90 days. So it's a start, okay? It's a start, and we hopefully get a whole generation of products out. What you cannot do yet is use it in our high-performance filtration products because you have to deal with the extractables, you have to deal with high pressures, and here's where innovation comes in. There's clearly, in product design, there are problems that we cannot answer yet. There are no replacement for certain resins. There are no solutions available yet. So there's a whole need for innovation and totally new thinking. how you can replace oil-based resins with bioplastics. Maybe there are new materials. Does not exist yet. Have to invent it. By the way, this is from a Massachusetts company here that does bioplastics. So I'm coming to my conclusion. I've given you, I would say, a few examples how maybe business growth and sustainability can coexist. I don't see them, I mean, they're opposites in the media, but they're not. It can be done together. I believe it can be. There are certainly very big challenges to increase carbon productivity, 10x. But with any big change project, you have to develop a big goal. And I see this really as a change management initiative from a management standpoint. You set a big goal, and you take small steps. And as you have these small steps, I showed you some of our small steps, and you show the progress you make, you actually get some momentum. And that's what we have today. We have good momentum. We also have skeptics. Certainly there are skeptics who fundamentally don't believe that global warming is a problem, but I kind of move beyond that, because what if it's a problem, what do you do? So I think we're beyond this. But there's also skepticism that is justified, because there's a lot of greenwashing going on at the same time. So denial and greenwashing are not helping. That's why a level of credibility is very key. That's why we first started with small things to learn what we could do and what we could not do. In other words, what's doable and where we still need to learn. And then we're coming out 2 years after we started with a report on it. So we feel comfortable now that we can actually do it and have an impact. That's very important. It's very much, I would say, a rule for any change initiative in a company. But making it a priority from my office and being a sponsor is also very important, because people will, in a company, pay attention to it. And why I'm not prescriptive on what needs to be done, because I don't have the solutions for it. There are many more people in the company with much better ideas. It does make a big difference in driving the change forward, and I've seen that. So today I come to a site and I see people haven't taken initiative. So for example, we have a plant in Cork Island where we make a lot of products in Ireland. And we were installing a solvent recovery solution, which is very important. Organic solvents have to be recovered. But that site also installed a wind energy generator at the same time. Well, I didn't know about that. I really didn't. They just did it, which is great. So there's really commitment initiative in the company, sometimes to my surprise. So I like that. 20% reduction in greenhouse gas, very doable, as you've seen. I think if anyone tells you it can't be done because we're a growing company, they're full of it. It's just not, I think it's very doable. 20% is nothing. I'm not bragging here, but it's from the experiments of the efficiency that you can generate, because you're starting at such a wasteful level, it should be very doable. I was surprised how easy it was. The role of government is very important. And I think the emphasis is actually on governments, whether it's state or federal or various countries, because they have to work together. And the track record is, of course, not so good on that. But it is key. Without a framework of regulations and incentives, it's going to be impossible to really impact the overarching issue in a fundamental way. I'm going to be on the Governor of Massachusetts Advisory Committee on Climate Change to make sure that, as legislation comes down, it also meets the business goals. Not lobbying for business, but making sure we can achieve both and that we actually have an impact on carbon productivity. For us, moving forward is, I would say we learned a lot doing this initiative. We're very encouraged by the progress we've made. We need to do much more than I've shown you here today. And we have many more plans. We'll be putting a big solar system in place. But we also need to get started now on the innovation side and building sustainability-driven innovation into our products. And that's going to be much harder. We need definitely a good framework from the government. I believe that if we have gas prices at this level, it's going to be very difficult to overall impact the issue of oil. I think our energy prices have to go up, and I know that's unpopular. But over time, with a long-term view, I think it is very doable. You know, we act irrationally in some way. So this whole topic of global warming is not necessarily being rationally addressed. Most people would subscribe that global warming is a problem. Most people would say, yeah, clearly we need to get independence from foreign oil. But at the same time, when it comes to paying for it with higher gas tax, most people are against it. So we need to bring that disconnect together and then convince more people why this is a good idea and where that investment that could come from taxes would actually go. So I will try to make my little contribution to that in the advisory. But it's really important that you also talk to people. If you already do that, that's great. But talk to people, make that connection between what we are doing today personally and in the company and how that impacts overall global warming and the issue that we have. So for us, what we're doing next is doing more of what we started. This will be a multi-year program. We need to go certainly beyond eco-efficiency and build efficiency into our overall products. And then I would say one closing comments would be, I believe there is not just a technological solution to everything here. So I'm not a believer that we will have a technological invention for everything. I think we need to have a discussion on how we fundamentally change how we live today, how we use energy, how the cities are designed, how far we commute, and how we have designed our life today. And that discussion needs to get started, and that's back to you. I think that's the challenge of your generation, to find answers to these very complicated problems. And I think it's the challenge of a generation, and it will take the best and the brightest that we have. Thank you very much. All right, now time for questions.
Hi, I'm Susan Zawaski. I'm a second-year Sloan student. I was wondering on the demand side for the new products that you're developing, especially in academic research labs where the budgets are really constrained, are you seeing a demand for, say, the new water purifier on your customer side?
I would say it's a bit too early to say because we just started that. We do see a demand for recycling programs and having an answer to the question of what do we do with the trash, clearly. I had several discussions with researchers that would say, wouldn't it be great if you had this product? You know, wouldn't it be great if you had a biodegradable plate or the biodegradable tips, you know, things that every researcher uses, yeah. I think if we had a really good solution today, we would probably see more demand. It's early on. Right now we're focusing on the trash, recycling.
Hi. Here.
Yeah.
I'm Michael Ensink, Sloan Fellow. I have a question. If you look at the numbers on your energy savings, and you have a very short ROI of less than 2 years, now the energy price has come down. And if you also look at, for instance, water that has a very subsidized price level, how do you see that impact? Because people will, in this situation will not be willing to invest if the ROI goes up to 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's... I mean, I would say for us, we would look at an ROI of 5, 6 years still. So for example, for a solar installation, you would have a longer ROI. It varies. These examples were extremely good financially, so they were like, why didn't we do it 10 years ago? You know, that kind of thing. There is low-hanging fruit. I think there will be other projects that will have a longer ROI, and we will do them anyway. I have a belief that the energy prices will go up. What we have today is an energy price that's driven by, you know, largely natural gas and coal. And when you look at the projections, they will go up. So if you build alternative energy, you build a hedge, even though it's a longer ROI, you build a hedge against energy price increases. So that's a benefit. It is still a problem. So we can buy wind energy today, which is fairly competitive in certain regions, like in California. We have one facility that is virtually 100% on wind energy. Can't do it in Massachusetts yet. But you look at each energy proposal in a different way, but I'm not going to only authorize RI projects with, RI of 2 years or less. I'm going to look at 5 or 6 years also. And I think there are a number of those. We haven't exhausted the list yet.
Hi, Brent Heyer visiting from Amsterdam. You mentioned, obviously, your work with government here in Massachusetts and some of the importance of government coordinating with private industry. Could you explain more about some of the challenges and advantages that you see in that area? I mean, specifically, not just private industry lobbying for the business interests, but what sort of advantages can be won there?
I mean, you want, very simply said, you want a voice. You want to make sure, let's say, if we put a cap and trade system in place, or there are incentives to adopt alternative energy, that they make also sense overall. You want to have a input on the priorities. Where should the money be spent? So, for example, the discussion we have in Massachusetts right now is transportation system. It's underfunded, it's not very well organized, and does it make sense to increase the gas price? And the business community has supported that, actually a bigger increase that's proposed. Because the current system, the way it's designed today, is basically an indirect subsidy of car-based transportation. And why would you do that? Plus, if you're from Europe, in the Netherlands, you pay $10 per gallon. So, and the difference is not necessarily the raw material, it's the taxes. So there is a way, of course, not in a big shock therapy, I hope, but there's a way to gradually increase the tax money and then use that tax money, if that is done, and use it for alternative energy, use it for better transportation system, including public transportation. That's the kind of discussion. How do you do that? And, for a politician in the United States, many times, you have to always go from election to election. So doing something unpopular is very difficult, So how can you get more understanding behind unpopular proposals? Let's face it, there are some unpopular decisions that have to be made. Extremely difficult in this recession right now, where people worry about their job. They don't worry about, transportation problems or global warming in 2050, So there has to be a strong communication effort and an alignment between business and government to move this agenda forward and further understanding. You go first.
Hi, I'm Poonam Narula. I'm a Sloan Fellow, and I was with Millipore in 2000 and 2001
Great.
with their lab water division.
All right.
My question is very impressive work here. I wanted to ask if you could share with us your learnings about how you went about addressing how you, with the different constituents, the board of directors, the shareholders, that you wanted to undertake this initiative, and then how you can use these learnings to work with other people in the value chain, in your suppliers and vendors, and improve energy efficiency.
This initiative started small, and quite frankly, I just decided to do something about it. I didn't go to shareholders or to my board and ask for approval. I think it's the right thing to do. I felt very confident about it. Also, we started small. And it's not, if you're not asking for a change in strategy or a $50 million capital investment, which we didn't have to do, we've invested some, but we funded it out of the operating budget. I think it was basically, I decided I'm going to do something about it. And then I had the benefit of having a lot of people who also wanted to do something in the company, and they came up with the ideas and did it. It's really that simple. And we did talk a lot about it and make sure that people knew why we're doing what we're doing and reinforce what was working, what was not working. And also, what made me very sure that this is the right thing to do is when you talk to customers and particularly researchers, like your question, what do you do with the trash? Do you have alternatives? You really see there's a need for it. So there's a clear business case to build that into your products. And we had more and more also the large customers looking at their sustainability initiative, coming to us as a supplier and asking, okay, so what are you doing about sustainability? What about this? And we looked at our reporting and said, well, we haven't disclosed anything, basically, so we got to get going and make sure we report it correctly. And then there are a few investment funds and investors, it's still the exception. They would say, what's your sustainability strategy? What are your greenhouse gas emissions? So they ask you to report certain things, and then you realize that it's important to disclose. And so you got to get ready for that. So we've done that too. Still the exception, though. Most investors are not too concerned about it. But so you can see this is taking place. This is taking ground. You want to do it. You put the pieces together and say, yeah, let's do it. And you can see what we've done is I would consider relatively simple. I haven't invented any new technology. I haven't invented a breakthrough business model. We've just done things that can be done. And we'll do more of it. And it will be more difficult in the next 5 years. But what I presented today is not rocket science at all. It's really what everyone could do.
Hi, I'm Dave Follett, first-year MBA student. And I think your number is getting 20% greenhouse gas reduction is very impressive. I think a lot of that comes from reducing waste that a lot of people are not really looking at right now. But what do you think it's going to take to get that 10 times carbon reduction, which means you'd have to reduce your carbon emissions by 90%? What kind of changes are required when it's not just getting rid of waste at that point?
Yeah, for us specifically, we have a big target in what we have in process emissions. We identified there are certain, we can replace some of the process testing tools we use that will really get down our process emissions by using a different gas, for example. That's very doable. Then the energy efficiency will continue, so continue to drive energy efficiency down, and then looking for alternative energy. So in France, we can buy a lot of nuclear energy, which is good for greenhouse gas. Really. So the footprint in France, we have a plant in France with about 1,000 people. That footprint is much lower. So you can see if you could achieve that for other plants, obviously you would be able to get carbon productivity up. And then, frankly, there will be some areas where we need new ideas and stuff where, well, we probably get to a point where we're stuck and we say, well, we don't have a solution for this. How do we do that? And outsourcing to China is not a solution to that. That's another thing I would say. Eventually, you have to look also deep into your supply chain and see how your suppliers are operating. We haven't done that yet. We're starting to look into it, but that's also a part. But it is doable, some investment to technologies. I think alternative energies will play a big role.
So you mentioned product take-back and recycling, and that's a significant challenge in many industries. Especially like in the electronics industry where consumers are not willing to pay for it. In your case, do you find that your customers are willing to pay a premium for the recycling service, or are you looking at more creative ways of making that financially viable?
Yeah, we're just in the middle of discussing that. Maybe initially basically a cost model where you're basically passing on the cost, but you're not making any margin on it. But it will not be free. And, particularly the pharmaceutical companies, they're willing to pay for that. They have pretty sizable incineration costs today anyway. So if you find a similar way, better way, they would definitely see the value of it. Research a little bit more difficult, but we're looking at charging for it, yeah.
I know some of you need to run off to classes, so I was thinking that perhaps this would be a great time if we could thank Dr. Madaus.
Thank you.